And hello, everybody. Welcome to Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel. I am your host, Marshall. And here we are to talk about some tips that will make your games better. Let's see here. We're getting the usual flurry of people who just kind of click the link and pop in and then realize, oh my gosh, there's audio. Someone's talking. Let's get out of here. And then they bail. But there you have it. Let's see here. I'll be sharing my screen. I'm doing this a little bit different than I normally do. Normally, I kind of put the full presentation on YouTube, but I found that the audience is more interactive here on our Discord with our Discord community. So, what I'm going to try to do is I figured out how to display my camera and everything here. I've turned it off on Discord, so it's going to look a little different than past episodes. But the idea is now I can feature the individual speakers here, and it's just a little easier to manage. Let's see here if I can share my screen. And here we are. Here's Tabletop Simulator, which then gives us something to look at, and then I can always blow it up like this. So I think, in short, this is going to make the podcast a little bit better for everybody, a little bit more enjoyable. And so I'm going to experiment with this format. Again, please bear with me as I learn how to manipulate the different interface. So, of course, you've borne with me for what, 2.5 years now. So what's another few more weeks? Okay, today we're going to talk about how to make your games better. And the reason is this comes from some discussion over on, what was I going to say here? Over in our main channel, where we've talked about with things like player to umpire ratio. And that's going to be my first tip. I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about just a number of other pro tips that I think we will all find useful to make the games better. Okay, so man, every time I click off the screen, it wants to do this, and I'm trying to organize. I probably need like a third monitor because I've got notes over here because I do prepare just a little to do these shows. Well, you know what? That's just going to have to do right there. All right, let's just get back to what I was doing. Where's my share screen? Goodness. There we are. Okay. All right, so now let's talk. Let's share the screen here. And I think that's actually Tabletop Simulator. Now I can do this. All right, we're good. Okay. The first thing, and yeah, I do have something here on the screen, so you have something else to look at besides me, even though this in particular isn't really what I'm shooting at right here. The first thing I want to talk about is player to umpire ratio. And I had a brief discussion yesterday, I think it was, where somebody was talking about the ratios. And I explained that you want to have a one, wow, that's like a horrible one, a 1-to-1 umpire to player ratio. And if you have that 1-to-1 player to umpire ratio, then you can generally move you move a lot faster. Most of our games, the player to umpire ratio is about 4-to-1. And with a 4-to-1 ratio, that means the umpire has to go to 4 different people, provide 4 different reports, then go around and get 4 different sets of orders. And that usually entails 4 different discussions with 4 different persons. And then they have to record those orders in some way or remember those orders. And I'm a big fan of, hey, you need to write down what this unit wants to do and what that unit wants to do, and this unit's doing this. And you need to write that out on the umpire map as the players are giving you their orders so you don't forget. I don't know that all umpires do that, but you have to do all of this. And this process takes you're going to spend at least 2 to 3 to 4 minutes per player. So you're looking at, 12 minutes, 15 minutes. This is why most of our turns take approximately 15 to 20 minutes to process, and sometimes even half an hour. When you get it to like a 6-to-1 player to umpire ratio, that's brutal, because you just have to figure the umpire is going to burn about 5 minutes per player, about a minute to give a report, at least 1 minute to take orders, sometimes two, plus another minute to kind of process everything. And there's always going to be that one guy. You're always going to have that one player, whether you're doing 6 or 4. And of course, the more players, the worse it becomes, who's just going to want to chat, or who has a whole list of questions they want to go through for you because their situation is complicated, or anything can be the case. Making things worse, the bigger the game and the fewer the umpires, you're going to get into these situations where I am going to match my unit against your unit, but as we do so, as I umpire these guys and you umpire these guys, I have to wait for you. And then when you come around, then we have to negotiate to work out what is actually going to happen. We have to agree on the modifiers and everything, roll the dice, and then we have just the housekeeping of flipping the units, applying the markers, and so on. So again, it's easily 5 minutes per player, oftentimes more. So if you want a game that moves a lot faster, you do need a better player to umpire ratio. If you're pulling 1 to 6, you're looking at 30 minutes per turn. If you do 1 to 4, you're looking at about 15 to 20 minutes. And if you do less than that, then the game moves a little faster. Now, it was explained to me yesterday that there are certain caveats. For example, if the umpires are new, if the players are new, if, there's all these other things. In other words, a 1-to-1 player to umpire ratio or a low player to umpire ratio does not necessarily equal a faster game. And that's true. It does not always equal a faster game. There are situations where you can have a 1-to-1 umpire ratio and the game still drags out. And that's because there are other factors involved, such as like the number of pieces they're pushing and so on. There's all kinds of complications. And we'll talk a little bit about this in another one of my pro tips towards the end of the show that I have on my list. But when I say a 1-to-1 player to umpire ratio, I'm offering that advice ceteris paribus. And sometimes you'll hear me use this Latin term. What the heck is ceteris paribus? It's a Latin phrase and it means all other things being equal. In other words, I only want to talk about this aspect and its likely impact on the game, how it's going to work. Headset went out. I guess I thought I had charged it overnight, but I guess not. So I'll just plug it in here. And now we won't have that problem again. All right, I apologize for the interruption. Anyway, when a comment is offered ceteris paribus, we're just talking about that particular thing. And obviously, I think logic would empirically demonstrate that a better player to umpire ratio is going to get you a faster game than one that is worse. Okay? And that's all I'm saying there. I'm not saying that the caveats and the other admonishments and conditions don't apply. They definitely do. But you definitely want that good player to umpire ratio. And I would tell people that if you are running a game, even if it's an open Saturday, because it's very hard for us to get umpires on our open Saturday games, and sometimes the lead umpire has to forcibly recruit 2 or 3 or 4 people to assist the game. Otherwise, the game just isn't going to go. And you can twist the player's arms because eventually people say, okay, I'll do it. because they know that if they don't, they're not going to get a very decent game. They're going to get a game that just drags. So eventually, 2 or 3 people in the spirit of the community will bite the bullet for you. The problem with that is that you end up in a situation where you still have a poor player to umpire ratio because you're looking for that minimum so that you can function and get the game going. And what I would challenge umpires to try is to see if you can get a game that runs closer to the 1-to-1 umpire to player ratio. If you are nervous about umpiring, you get into a game and you're nervous about it, let me tell you, umpiring is actually quite a bit of fun. In fact, we have several people who will only umpire. They refuse to play. They will only umpire because that's how much fun it is. So it can be a lot of fun. There is a payout for being an umpire versus being a player. So keep that in mind. All right, let's see here. Let's go to our next tip here, which is the briefing. There is a document floating around in the IKS that is about briefings. And hang on here, I'm going to stop that part there. There is a document that's out there floating about briefings that talks about a better way to do your briefings. I believe Ottovsky wrote the document, and the bottom line is this. It's kind of like having some sort of a game plan, a battle plan, a lesson plan, a business plan. Anytime that you plan and you write things out and you go over it, you spend time thinking about it, reflecting on it, writing it up, you're generally going to do better than if you shoot from the hip. It's just like the difference between taking an aimed shot and just, doing this kind of gangster thing like they do out on the streets, right? You really want to take the aimed shot if you can. Now, I am a prime offender. I am the guy who will throw a map out and just chuck a fistful of pieces on the map and say, here's your objective. You start in that corner. You start in that corner. Let's fight. Game on. That's because I learned my Kriegsspiel in the streets. That's how we do it in the streets. There's no, formalities or anything. You just run it, right? But the thing is, if you have a briefing, you are inherently going to have a better experience. Again, ceteris paribus, right? There are poor briefings. The briefing can actually be a disaster, whatever, right? You can completely not know what you're talking about, which is why I don't do briefings. But, you can, yes, you have a better game if you sit there, if you do your research, you do your reading, and you write a briefing. It can be historical, and if it's historical, then you could just kind of, dump the history in there. And some of the longer briefings I've seen come from historical Kriegsspiels because then the umpire is able to put in the backstory. They're able to fill in the history. They're able to give you the historic order of battle. They're able to kind of, plug in all this historical information that provides the commander with the context they need to approach the game with the correct frame of mind, the correct mindset, the right attitude. And then it kind of puts them on a set of tracks or rails where they are more likely to play appropriately. Again, the master of this is Ottovsky. I wish he were here. I'd have him talk about it. But what would happen is one of the games he did was this Russian scenario. It was a World War II Russians versus Germans Eastern Front scenario is what I should say correctly. And I was commanding the Soviet forces, and what I was told was you have to plan everything out in advance. In other words, he put me on rails for the scenario. Now I got to pick. I got to make a number of very important options. For example, what time did I want the artillery to fire? Where do I want those shells to land? Where are these groups going to go in? But then once I had the plan made, I was stuck to the plan. I couldn't hardly deviate from the plan. I had to follow the plan. So as a commander, all my decisions are kind of made up front, and then the battle just kind of unfolded according to the script that I wrote, more or less. And I thought that was a very interesting way to play. And the cool thing about that is it didn't allow me the flexibility, or the, I should say, the opportunity, if you will, to just kind of go off and do whatever. I was limited to a lane of attack. I could only operate within these certain parameters. If I wanted to take advantage of things like artillery, I had to, plan the fire mission, and this is when it was going to happen, and this is when it was going to land, and it was a really compelling exercise. Now, imagine that versus when I have just kind of thrown a bunch of pieces at the map and said, you're here and you're here, you're red, you're blue, fight. And I have in my mind an idea for how the scenario is supposed to go, and it just never goes that way. I've literally put together carefully crafted scenarios, even, and I've told everybody, here's what we're trying to do. And then I have a player just do this, just completely go 90 degrees off script. And then what do you do when that happens? And as an umpire, that's a real Kriegsspiel problem for you. And, it's about the players solving problems, not you as the umpire having problems. So having a good briefing, I think, really sets the stage. It sets you and the players up for success. Whether it's a fictional briefing or a historical briefing, it is important to have something in advance of the event. So have something, I would say, write it out. And something that's written to both sides. It should be, at least a couple, 2 or 3 paragraphs plus the order of battle. At a minimum. I mean, I've seen briefings that run for 75 pages. But I would say just, at a minimum, 2 or 3 paragraphs should be plenty to give everybody what they need if you're just kind of running an ad hoc, impromptu, quick game. And the bigger the event and the more serious you want the event to be, I think the more detailed and in-depth the briefing probably should be. Now, you don't have to go overboard. It doesn't have to be 75 pages. I don't know that there is actually a proper sweet spot where, if it's 5 pages, it's right on. If it's 10 pages, it's kind of pushing it. If it's 2 pages, it's too short. No, look, this isn't, you're not writing a college essay here for your professor. Just again, it's always going to vary, like anything in the world. It's going to just have to be tailored to the experience. And in time, you'll just kind of figure it out. The nature of your community, the kind of people you have that you're playing with, you'll do what's right for you. But again, the biggest pro tip I can give you is have a briefing, okay? Have a plan and share that plan with the players, so they kind of know this is what's expected, and they do that, and then they focus on the problem at hand. Which brings me to the next pro tip, and that is the problem. All right, every Kriegsspiel game should have a problem for every team and for every player. Now, this is something I'm okay at doing. I'm pretty good at doing this because I think about this whenever I do a proper game. Now, I don't run a lot of proper games. I don't run a lot of games anymore anyway. I'm kind of retired from umpiring, which is the point. I like on purpose. I want to play. I don't want to umpire all the time. I'm tired of umpiring. But neither here nor there. The problem should be central to what the teams are doing, to what the players are doing. And the players should always have the problem in their mind, okay? So there's a mission. And the mission, there's some problem associated with the mission, and the players have to solve that problem. Very important. And there's 2 kinds of problems. There's one, the first kind is the kind that is given to you by the situation, by the umpire. Maybe it's related to terrain. Maybe it's related to your force ratio. Maybe, you're badly outnumbered. What do I do when I'm outnumbered? Or what do I do if I have combat in open terrain or in rugged terrain? What do I do if there's a river crossing and I need to secure the river crossing, but, if I don't do that, there's going to be a bigger problem. That's what I mean by the problem, right? There's always some problem. Where do I send my forces? If I have to split up my force, how many do I send one way or another? These are problems that are created by the scenario. Then there are other problems, what I call organic problems. And organic problems are those that are created by the players themselves, their interactions, their movements, their choices. They will create certain problems for themselves and for others. I call those organic problems. So, for example, if a player sends a unit way out there, off on their own. One of the problems they've created for themselves now is that their orders to that unit, the reports back from that unit, the command and control communication with that unit is much diminished. It's greatly diminished because the unit is out there on the end of a very long tether or leash, and they no longer have control over it like they do with those units that are right up close to them, you know. Um, they've created a problem for themselves. Let's say, for example, I don't know. I mean, there's so many different ways you create problems for yourselves. You also create problems for other players. For example, let's say you're able to concentrate force or catch the enemy in a crossfire. You've created an organic problem that wasn't intended by the umpire, but you've created a problem for your opponent. Now your opponent has to solve it. They have to figure out, how do I fight through this or extract my force and just not get completely destroyed here? These are problems, and problems should be central to the game. Now, the organic problems are going to happen on their own. The players will muck things up for each other and for themselves. You can just rely on that. That's a constant. That's like a law of the universe. But the problem that you give to the players is very important. You must give them a problem. Otherwise, what's the point of the exercise? So there should always be something where the force ratio is imbalanced, or where the terrain favors one side or another. Or here's kind of an interesting thing, and I've seen these problems before. You're limited. Your rules of engagement are tight. They're limited. Like, you can't just go and start smashing, but you actually have to respect certain elements of the enemy, or certain terrain, or certain communities, whatever it may be. You can't just operate and do whatever you want. You know, it's not a blank canvas. You have to respect borders. You have to respect associations, you know, alliances, whatever. There may be problems. One of the cool problems I saw one time was where your commanders are not very capable. They're, you know, appointed by status rather than merit, and now you have these sub-commanders underneath you who may or may not do things the way you want them done because they're frankly incompetent. So these are problems that you can create for the players that keeps them focused on the game, and it gives them something to work on, something to chew on. Look, if you just play Street Kriegsspiel, where you throw, you know, red blocks and blue blocks in a corner of the map and say go at each other, what's the problem? What have you given the players to do? It's kind of like telling a joke without a punchline, or a story without a point, or a podcast with nothing of substance. Anyway, let's go to my next point. My next point, I'm going to go ahead and bring up my screen again. If I share my screen, if it'll work. There we are. And I don't know if I'm sharing my screen. What the heck do I know? There we are. All right. And this one, of course, went completely blank, but looks good to me. All right. So here's a map, and the next thing I'm going to tell you is a map. You want a nice map, and the reason is because players are going to be looking at this for hours. Now, I know there are some of you who are probably professional practitioners, you know, and you're like, yeah, but dude, in real life, they're not going to have this beautiful map to look at. In real life, they might be lucky if they have a hand-drawn map that's on a napkin. And you're like, okay. And look, if you're a professional practitioner, let's say you are at a military academy or something, and you are trying to train your officers, and they have to understand what to do on an improvised map that has been hand-drawn by yourself or another participant or something. I get that. That's the way you should do it, because you want to train them for reality. In fact, going back to what I was just talking about, problems, If you have a crummy map or no map at all, that's one of the problems that your umpire is giving you as a player or as a team to solve. And I think in real life, that's a very important problem because you could be thrown into a situation where you don't have a map, or the map that you have is crude, or the map that you have is wrong or lacks detail. Yeah, I want you to train for that because I want you to be capable of dealing with that problem if and when you encounter it in real life. But if you're playing for fun, which is mostly what we do in the IKS, now we do kind of take professional and increasingly professional tack on these
Currently
things.
experiencing difficulties,
Are you
which
there?
hopefully will be resolved when Marshall figures out that no one can hear what he's saying.
Oh no, are you serious?
Thank you for your patience.
Lord. Okay, let me see what's going on because it's coming across an OBS. Now I don't have permission to speak. Why don't I have permission to speak? Oh, Lord. Let's see here. Where is... Did I move? There we are. What happened? How long was I cut out for?
About 6-7 minutes.
Oh,
Your finest work. Your finest work, Marshall.
I'm what?
It was your finest work today.
Yeah, I bet it was. I bet it was. Oh, this is awful. I can't believe it cut out like that. The YouTube is saying they could hear us fine. So maybe it was coming across fine on YouTube. The OBS said it was fine. So there must be something here on Discord. Well, there we have it. So now I've messed up both live streams. Robert calls me a Luddite, which in his to his credit, he called it very early in the show. But now I'm really, oh Lord. This has been a good show, actually. I've had good things to say, I feel. And I guess it worked on the YouTube, but I've cut you guys out on the Discord, and I feel really bad about that.
It was brilliant. It was brilliant, especially that last 6 to 7 minutes.
Oh, I bet. Why did you wait so long? You need to... I don't know what I did. I must have clicked something or selected something in doing my transitions here. So I am still live streaming, but I'm gonna call it here, and I'll try to reprise this or represent it next week. I think because I'm like, oh, I'm defeated.
It's actually a great topic that deserves a good podcast. So I think it's great.
What the fact that I'm morally defeated?
No, the briefings and preparation and context and how to do that. I think it's a really great topic. So
that's the kind of thing that absolutely Paul gets completely excited about.
Oh, well, that's it.
Let's regroup. We're routed today, but let's regroup.
I agree. We'll regroup and redo this next week, then next Sunday, because again, the player to umpire ratio, the briefing, the problem for me, I think that could actually be a whole episode probably. But the problem that you give to the players, I mean, this is right out of Moltke, right? He wrote the book of the problems and all of that. There has to be a purpose or a problem for everybody to work on. But then the other thing too is you want to have a nice map. And I just did my whole little spiel on what if the map is just hand drawn, or what if there is no map. And I think that's appropriate if you are doing it in a professional sense and you're going after, I'm actually trying to train officers. That's one thing. But on the other hand, if you are playing for fun, I think there needs to be a nice map. People have to be able to, they're going to be looking at it. It's just more entertaining. if everybody agrees to play without a map or to play with just hand-drawn maps, you could play that way. I don't think it would be as fun, but totally you could do that if that's the problem you want to create for your players. But in general, I think a nice map. The other thing after that that follows is pieces. And I had the Grand Leipzig module open because I was going to zoom in on the pieces and show everybody like, hey, these are some really nice pieces, you know? And you want the pieces to be pretty. But the other two things that I had was that you really want to keep your communications to business only, particularly between players and umpires. You know, I am just a joker. I think I'm the funniest guy on the planet, and of course I'm not, which is probably part of the joke that God's playing on me. But ultimately, when you are umpiring and playing, you need to be very serious. You know, it needs to be a very quick, to the point, serious, strict staccato interaction, I feel, because time is of the essence. Now, it always depends. Again, if you're playing for fun, you have fun. You're there for fun. But if you're playing kind of a more serious experience with a mixed crowd, yeah, try to, dial it up that way. Business only was my note. And then the last thing is the critique. And in the critique, I would always say, try to find something positive to reinforce that every player did, but also try to find something that they could improve upon if it's there. Hey, you start out by saying, you did this really well. You know, you marched to contact really well. You followed your initial orders really well. Where you went wrong was when you made contact with the enemy and every decision after that, you know. You made Marshall look like a professional.
What do you do if they didn't do anything well?
Well, okay, so then I would say is, hey, you showed up, you got in here. Maybe this is your first experience, you know, you tried. I might ask.
I hope you learned something.
Yeah, exactly. Why did you do things the way that you did? I would ask, and let them have an answer, and then maybe I would praise that. And I'm like, you know what? Okay, I see that. You did your calculus. You had a logical reason for why you did what you did. Now it was wrong, but hey, you're thinking. So at what point you show up and you're engaged with the process and you're not just screwing off? If you're just messing around, then that's different. I'm not necessarily going to want you to keep coming back, so I don't care so much about your praise. But I think that's maybe 1 in 1,000 individuals, if any. If any. I mean, a person who's there to troll is not going to be there for 4, 5, 6 hours just to troll, because they could troll a lot more efficiently in real time doing something else on social media or something, rather than sitting here and waiting 30 minutes for an update. So, yeah, I think you can find something positive or make something up to say, you know.
You marched completely the wrong direction. You attacked your own supply base and then surrendered.
But you know what?
But thanks for showing up.
But you did march on the road. You did. Your choice of road network to use to get to your objective, right on. You had an objective.
You had an objective. Yeah, and you successfully achieved it.
Yeah, you successfully destroyed it. You know, the other team, by the way, is awarding you a medal. So that would be it. Oh, Lord. Okay, so it looks like the YouTube was fine, but the Discord, there was some technical issue. I have to put some brain power into finding out why I got muted on Discord. Because
the next great Kriegsspiel for Marshall is going to be the Kriegsspiel of how to do a live stream.
Oh, I know. You know what? I'm seriously thinking I need to do a software like StreamYard or something. I need to get off this OBS crap, and I just need to have a paid live streaming software. So we quit breaking these episodes. My headset went out. Despite. And see, now I'm hearing myself.
Yes.
So
you're echoing.
Yeah. So it's just, yeah, it's time
Is your headset wireless?
It is, but if I leave it plugged in, it'll stay connected and on. But if I unplug it, then it might cut out after a while if the battery's low. The thing is, the battery shouldn't be low. It was plugged in all night. So
Yeah,
maybe something was loose.
How long does it keep a charge?
Well, it's
What's the
relatively.
endurance on it?
I've had like hours. Hours.
Okay.
It's good. The problem I have is range, which is why I have a wireless headset at all. If I go downstairs to my kitchen, I lose connection. Which
Yeah, I'm thinking about getting a wireless one because this wire is really just annoying the hell out of me. So
yeah. Maybe we need to have an episode on Kriegsspiel hardware.
There you go.
And then we could kind of show off like guys at car shows. Wow, is that 300 foot range? Wow, look at you, yeah.
Man,
We start putting like the decals and everything on the headsets, and
that'll be awesome.
I think it'd be great. It'd be great.
Get a little IKS decals and we put on the side. We get the big magnet ones we could put on our car too.
There you go.
There you go.
There we go. We got it going on right there.
The problem is that's a magnet, and if you put it on your headphones, it's going to like screw up the electronics or something.
Well, like I would know the difference.
It might make yours better, actually.
Yeah. Default mode, right? Look, that's how I improved my game, because once we figured out that I am wrong 60% of the time, I simply, reversed my logic, and now I'm right 60% of the time. So there you have it.
This too will change.
Oh man, I owe an apology to everybody on the YouTube or who views this. I may just leave it up, even though it's all messed up, because I do think that what they could hear, what I was sharing, was worthwhile. And then we will kind of go over this again next Sunday. And it might even be more polished and a little better. And I'll look at some software. So
I find the messed up ones to be more entertaining in a lot of ways. So
yeah. At mine and the IKS expense, we look like a bunch of amateur chumps who don't know how to use the internet. Yeah, very good. Very good.
At the end of the year for New Year's, you should do a blooper reel.
Why? They can just view anything on our YouTube. Just view the whole thing.
Actually, we could do a whole. You could do a whole like live game blooper reel of all the games that we did during the year, and the bloopers from all of the games that we did during the year that were live streamed.
Yeah.
Just little snippets. Here's where Joe Blow decided to burn his own wagons, or whatever, it's just a blooper reel.
That would be funny. I don't think I have those editing skills, not even close, but it would be amusing. But I just think it'd be like a newspaper on December 31st saying we would like to retract everything we printed in the last year. Just all of it.
Dewey beats Truman.
Yeah, exactly. We regret the error.
Marshall beats Jan.
We regret the error. Yeah. Anyway. Oh my God. Okay. Well, so there we have it.
All right. There you have it.
All right, guys. I'm gonna stop the YouTube stream and end the torture there, and then we'll come back to that next week. So let me stop the stream.